it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. Today I am creating a 12 by 12 layout following a sketch challenge that is currently posted over on the Hip Kit Facebook page, and I am using the January 2023 Hip Kit kit. As you saw there in the very beginning, that heart paper was my inspiration for this layout. I did do some hand stitching, and to be honest, I am not the hand stitch expert. In fact, I learned after doing this one that it is not my strength either, because some of it looked really bad, but it turned out really good in the end. So I did a chunk of that, hand stitched 3 of the hearts, and then I'm using the cut file for this month, and I layered it up, cutting one offset compared to the other, and that is what I'm going to use as a big chunk of my title. And then I'm also going to be documenting these 2 photos of myself from a recent trip but from a recent outing that my husband and I did. And it's all about learning to love yourself, and I've come on a very long journey over the last year and a half of learning how to re-love myself again, and this was that moment that kind of like finally triggered everything, that I was happy in my skin and happy with who I was becoming. So I documented these photos for that. I am going to use the B side of that heart paper, which is this lavender notebook type paper. I'm going to use that to layer a little bit underneath this, because that heart paper was white and I was using white for my background paper. I felt like it just needed something. The sketch that I'm following, I will leave linked in the description box down below. It does have this horizontal element along with 2 clusters or 2 photos with some mixed media. I kind of follow it a little close. It's not 100%, but definitely was heavily inspired by that sketch. So I'm going to go through, ruffle up the edges of these, put my title together, put the one on top of the other so that it gives it a little bit of a layer, and then it's going to eventually live up there on the top beside that photo, and that's pretty close how that's going to end up being. So before I go any further, I do end up sticking this down. Now, what I should have done was do my mixed media first before I did this. And it'll show actually a little bit later as to why, because I didn't gesso these 2 pages, so it absorbed some ink and paint that I used, but I was able to get over that and overcome that, so I show that too, just in case you would ever come across anything like that. So as I put everything back together, I pull the scrap pieces out from the Love Yourself that I cut off of my cutting machine, and I'm using those scrap pieces to back my photo instead of using the other papers in the kit. It's a good way to use up those scrap pieces, so there is a very minimal waste. I do use my giant roll of Altenew foam tape for this. I love this tape. I find that it's probably one of the better ones. It sticks to mixed media. I've tried a lot of foam tapes, and I have a tendency to actually glue everything on mixed media, but this one sticks pretty good. I do use the second scrap from the title to layer up my second one as well, and this is where I decided to bring in mixed media. I'm going to use white gesso. I do add it to the top of the page there, and I fan out the end of it with my finger. I feel like that it doesn't give that harsh edge then, and if it's not covered all by mixed media, then it doesn't really show that line, and it helps blend in with the paper. So I add it up to the top, and then I do add it just to part of the bottom, just around where my bottom photo is going to be. The top I did the whole way across because I knew I was going to put it behind my photo and behind my title. But this one I just did where my photo was going to go, because that's what this sketch had really called for. So I'm going to take and add the same foam behind my top photo, and then start to lay everything out together. I do add foam to the back of the Love Yourself title too. This one took a little bit longer, so I edited a bunch of that out. I just cut small pieces of that same foam behind there, but it took forever. So I'm using these 2 magical powders to create my background. I chose a blue and a yellow. I think these actually might be from a past Hip Kit. I'm not 100% sure. I chose the blue and yellow because I'm going to do some of the blue and yellow by themselves, but also because the blue and yellow make green when mixed together, and there are green hearts in this paper, and I'm also going to be using green in the die cuts that I use. So whether it mixes together or not, it's a great combination to use for this layout. So I'm going to do super fast through all of this mixed media. I do take some time through it. I do let it dry and add a second layer. But I really fuss with it a lot, so I kind of sped it up, but I did leave some in there so that you could see how I did it. But it did take a bit to dry and whatnot, but I cut that all out. So on the bottom there, you can start to see that lavender paper starting to absorb the water and the ink color. And that's what I was talking about, how I should have done my mixed media prior to laying and adhering this strip down. But in the very end, after I'm done doing all of the mixed media work, I actually show how I cover it up, and it worked so good. Even though the most of it was covered up by my die cuts in the end. But I left it in just to show as like a little tip, like if something would ever happen like this to you, it's a really cool way to just cover it up, and it's quick and easy. So I am just going through, I add in some blue, I add in some yellow, I let it mix together to form the green. I make the green intentionally there. And I just keep letting it dry, add a little bit more color, letting it dry. It is those layers of letting one layer of mixed media completely dry and then going back in and adding that second layer that gives it that depth. So if you're struggling a little bit with mixed media, let it completely dry and come back to it later on. Even if when you come back to it, it's just an adding of splatters. That's what I'm going to do here with a smaller brush. That helps add loads of the layers, the look of layers, and it helps that mixed media pop. I love how this ended up finishing. If you can see the top there and that my regular paper, it really soaked up a lot of that. So I can't remember if it's now or later on that I do that, but I do show how I cover it up. I do roll the paper towel over it. That's just to soak up anything extra liquid that is on top there. This is how I cover it up right here. This is white gesso. I just string white gesso on there, and look at that. Rub it right over top of it, and it totally covers it up. I was so excited that this worked so good. So yeah, it covered it up. Can't even tell that it's there. So I loved how it turned out. So I went ahead and did that at the bottom, added some white gesso right over the top of it. I didn't really worry about the bottom too much because I knew it was going to be covered up a lot, but that top I knew was going to show. So I make sure that I did the top heavier than the bottom. But yeah, I love how it worked it out. So once that was completely dry, I brought in my white spray mists and added loads of white splatters just to add that extra layer of depth right back, and adding the white right back into my layout over top of that color. Again, adds more layers, adds more depth, and love how that looks. So I'm going to go ahead and start gluing things down now that my mixed media is dry. I take forever to take off all the tiny bits and pieces of the backings of this foam adhesive on this title because I put it everywhere. And then I do add a little bit of glue behind my photos and this title. It's just to give it that extra little safety, I guess you could say, that I know that it's going to actually stick to this mixed media over time and that it won't fall out. But I love how this is looking so far. I start to pull in some of the bits and pieces of the ephemera. That top title says love, or life taught me to cherish moments. The bottom one is going to say can't put it into words, thankful. I do add those on some foam adhesive as well. And then I'm going to start just surrounding both of my photos with lots of the floral die cuts. I love the die cuts that were in the embellishment kit this month. I've already used almost all of them, and I'm only on layout like 2 or 3. But this blue flower, I absolutely love how that looks over there. I was kind of worried about using it, but it kind of matched the mixed media enough that it worked. So I'm just going to keep trimming and adding, building the layers around my photo. I glue things under and behind, and then I take some foam adhesive and add it behind some things so that it stays popped up off of the page. I love ruffling my flowers, and you'll see me bending things, lifting things, I love when my florals and such pop up off of my page, so I do that with a lot of things. And right there, just bend up the edges, add that extra layer of depth. That shadow behind it makes a world of difference, especially with mixed media layouts. So I'm just going to keep adding some things in, adding in too much glue on that bottom one. I was trying to figure out how and where to wipe it off. But just adding things in, layering behind, using a lot of the die cuts. But I do bring in some other elements too from the embellishment kit too. I add a lot of these little leaves in behind everything just to kind of help tie everything together. And then I add some banners in underneath, some titles, and then this is where I start layering some other things in. This sticker sheet I haven't used yet. I have a layout in mind for it, so I kind of have just been letting it sit aside, but there were all of these buttons that were on it, and I thought that it would be absolutely perfect because the hearts have like this sewing theme going on, and then I did some of that hand sewing on there. So I went through and grabbed loads of these buttons, popped them up on foam adhesive, and put them all around my page. I found that really cute. I think it's a journal or a notebook, but it had the same teal color as the title, so I added that in as to fill that space in as well. But I take some time and I add, it was probably a good bit of the majority of those buttons I add on this page, except for that cluster down in the bottom right. They had holes where where you would stitch a button on. I didn't use those because I think I'm going to use those for that other layout that I had in mind for the sticker sheet. But I do use foam behind all of them. I layer them around the page. Sometimes I find some things like this hard to use, but if you use it in different spots and you layer color on color, tone on tone, and keep like that color consistency, like that lavender one. I almost didn't use it, but I thought, you know what, we're going to use it and we're going to put it by the lavender paper. I didn't have a lot of lavender going on in this, but I didn't care. I used it. I loved how it looks. And I used an embellishment that I probably normally wouldn't reach for. So yeah. So the title. I added to the title, and I wanted to make my title Remember to Love Yourself. And then another thought was to make my title say Always Love Yourself. I did add the Remember to up there. I can cut it out because I played around with that title so much trying to get it to look the way that I wanted, and it still at this point is not what I want, and I do add to it later on. So I cut that whole thing out because I'm going to add in a bit more here later on. But these word strips, I do use quite a few of them on the spread, but I do color block them. Down at the bottom you can see that lime green and the darker green one. The lime green one says don't go back, look forward. The dark green one says positivity, and then I use the two on the top. It says feel an 11 out of 10 and don't rush, take your time with it. Literally is just all of those describe the story behind these, and then after I get those down, I just go back more through the chipboard and the puffy stickers. I add a few more bits and pieces in and around my photos behind the embellishment clusters and butterflies, and this is where I finish off my title. I end up making my title Remember to Always Love Yourself. I love how that it ended. I didn't like the process of the title, just because I couldn't find the right words to fit and nestle into that cut file the way I wanted to. And then I did this, and I feel like everything came together. So even though the word always ends up kind of looking a little mumbled jumbled in there, like it was stuck in between the words, maybe not like it was intended, I love how it turned out, and it's the meaning behind it anyways, in the process of everything. So once I get those down in, I do add a couple little bit more hearts from the puppy sticker pack. I grabbed some things from the chipboard, some chipboard hearts to add those in. And then lastly, I do go back to the puffy stickers, and I add in some of the puffy dots at the bottom of the page. I try to use a bunch of them on here, but I honestly just color block things. It helps me use up my product. but it doesn't create such a focus on it that it takes your eye away from everything else going on in the page. So after I add those in, that's going to wrap up the layout, and that is it. There's some close-ups coming for you here at the end. Thanks so much for stopping by today. I hope I have inspired you. If you're new to my channel, I invite you to hit that subscribe button. And returning friends, thank you so much for all of your love and support. Please be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It really helps out my channel. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye.